Hello everyone. Today we have a powerful story about a young man who discovered something incredible about the human mind. By the end of this story, we'll learn how controlling our thoughts can completely transform our lives. But that's not all. While we listen to this tale, we will also discover the true meaning of honesty and discipline, and how these qualities can unlock doors we never knew existed. This will help us understand ourselves better and grow stronger, so stay with us until the end. Once upon a time, in a bustling city filled with tall buildings and busy streets, there lived a 22-year-old man named David. He worked as a clerk in a small accounting office on the third floor of an old building. David had always been an ordinary person with ordinary dreams, but something was different about him. He had a terrible habit that was slowly destroying his life. Every day, David would tell small lies to make his life seem more interesting or to avoid getting into trouble. At work, he would tell his boss that he finished reports when he hadn't even started them. At home, he would tell his parents that he was saving money when he was actually spending everything on useless things. With his friends, he would make up stories about amazing adventures that never happened. These lies had become so natural to David that he didn't even realize when he was doing it anymore. His mind had become like a wild horse running in all directions, and he had lost control of it completely. One morning, David woke up feeling terrible about himself. He looked in the mirror and saw tired eyes staring back at him. He thought, "What kind of person have I become? I can't even trust myself anymore." That day at work, something unusual happened. His boss called him into the office and said, "David, I need you to handle the Peterson account. It's worth $50,000 to our company. Can I trust you with this responsibility?" David felt his heart beating fast. This was the biggest opportunity of his career, but he also knew he wasn't ready for such a big responsibility. His old habit wanted him to say yes immediately and figure it out later, but something inside him hesitated. He stood there for a moment, his mind racing with thoughts. Then, for the first time in years, David made a choice that surprised even himself. He looked at his boss and said, "Sir, I appreciate your confidence in me, but I don't think I have enough experience for such an important account. I would need more training first." His boss looked at him with surprise, then slowly smiled. "David, that's exactly the kind of honesty I'm looking for. Is there I can trust to grow? Let's start with projects and build your skills." David left the office feeling strange. He had told the truth, and instead of being punished, he felt lighter somehow, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. That evening, David sat in his small apartment thinking about what had happened. He realized that for years, his mind had been like a room filled with smoke. The lie he told added more smoke, making it clearly. When he chose honesty, it was like opening a fresh air in. He decided the truth, no matter how difficult it would be. Experiment. One week, he would tell only seemed. The next day, David's friend Mark asked, "Hey, do you want to go to that expensive restaurant? You're all how much money you make." David had the old habit trying to take control. He wanted to say yes and pretend he could afford it, but he remembered his promise to himself. "Marcus, I'd love to join you. I can't afford it right now. Maybe we could go somewhere less expensive." Mark paused for a moment, then said, "You know, I respect that. Let's just grab pizza instead. I was actually worried about spending much money myself." As the days passed, David noticed something remarkable happening. Each time he chose honesty over lies, his mind it was like cleaning a dirty window. The more he cleaned it, the outside. started to understand that his mind was like a garden. For years, he had planted seeds of lies and deception, and seeds of confusion and anxiety had grown everywhere. But now, by planting seeds of truth, beautiful flowers of peace and confidence were beginning to bloom. The fourth day of his experiment, David faced his biggest and asked about his job. "David, your cousin just got promoted at his company. How are things going at your office?" In the past, David would have made up stories about important meetings and big projects, but now he took a deep breath and said, "I'm still learning and growing. I made some mistakes recently, but I'm working hard to improve myself. Not to be yet. Right path." His mother was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised him. "David, I'm proud of you for being so honest. Father and I have been. You always seemed to be pretending everything was perfect. Now I know you're really growing up." David felt tears in his eyes. He realized that his lies hurt him. They had also prevented the people who loved him from knowing him and helping him. By the end of the week, David felt like a complete person. His mind, which used to jump around like a monkey, was now calm and focused. He could think clearly about his problems and find real solutions, just making up stories to. He discovered that controlling his mind wasn't about being quiet, but about knowing what thoughts to feed and what thoughts to ignore. David realized that wasn't punishment, but a gift he gave to himself. Every time he chose truth over lies, every time he chose hard work over shortcuts, every time he chose effort, he was building a strong self. His mind became like a well-trained athlete, full of amazing things because it was with honesty and discipline. David walked into the office with a new confidence. He had learned the power to control his mind inside him all along. He just needed to practice it every day, like strengthening a muscle. His boss asked him about a project. David gave clear answers. When he did something, he admitted it and asked for help. When he made a mistake, he took responsibility and learned from it. Slowly, people around David noticed the change. His co-workers started to him for advice because they trusted his honest opinions. His friends appreciated that they could count on him to tell them the truth, even when it was difficult to hear. His family him because they finally knew the real David, not the fake version he had been for years. David's journey was just beginning. He was about to learn that controlling his mind, honesty and discipline would lead him to opportunities and adventures he never could have imagined. The real test of his newfound mental strength was, and it would change everything he thought he knew about success and happiness. 3 months after the began, something happened that would test his mental discipline never before. His company announced downsizing, and several employees would lose their jobs. David watched panic spread through the office like wildfire. People were whispering in corners, making desperate phone calls, and some were even spreading false rumors about who might be. David felt fear mind like a dark shadow. His old self would have immediately started elaborate stories about his importance to the company, or perhaps begun spreading rumors to make others look bad so he might appear better by comparison. With his new David recognized these thoughts as they arose, a conscious choice about bond. Instead of giving in to fear, David decided the crisis as an opportunity to practice greater discipline. He created a simple rule. Every action in this difficult time must come from truth and genuine help. not from fear or selfishness. This decision would lead him down a path unexpected. David began arriving at work earlier each day, not to impress his boss with dedication, but because he wanted to complete his tasks with excellence. He noticed that when his mind focused on doing quality work, rather than worrying about outcomes he couldn't control, he felt peaceful even in the midst of chaos. His colleagues were stressed and distracted, making mistakes and arguing with each other. But David's calm presence began to stand out. One morning, David heard his co-worker Sarah crying in the break room. She was on the phone with her husband, payments if she lost her job. David's first instinct was to walk away and avoid in someone else's problems, but he remembered his commitment to honor and helpfulness. He approached Sarah after her phone call and said, "I can't but overhear that you're worried about this. Is there anything I can do to help?" She looked surprised. In the past, David had always seemed too busy with his own concerns to notice others. "Don't know, David. I just feel so happy. I've been for 5 years, but I don't know if that's enough to keep my job." David thought for a moment, then said, "Would you like to recognize your work accomplishments? Sometimes we forget how much value we actually bring to the company. Maybe if we document everything clearly, it will help you feel confident about your contributions." Next hour, David helped create a detailed list of her achievements and projects. As they worked together, they discovered something amazing. He focused completely on helping someone else. His own fears and worries seemed clear. His mind became even clearer and focused than when he was just working on his own problem. He realized that it wasn't just about controlling selfish thoughts, but also about directing his mental energy towards serving others. Word spread about what David had done for Sarah. So other colleagues were asking their own concerns. Mark needed assistance in his project. Jennifer wanted to know how to present her ideas more clearly to management, and Robert asked to help him practice for a presentation. Each time David helped someone, he felt his mental strength growing stronger. The most surprising part was that helping others didn't take away from his own work. Instead, it seemed to make him more efficient and creative. When his mind was focused on solving real problems rather than creating imaginary ones, he could accomplish tasks faster and with better quality than ever before. David began to understand that a disciplined mind wasn't just about personal control. It was about using that control to create value for everyone around him. 2 weeks before the layoff announcements, David's boss, Mr. Johnson, called him into his office. David walked in calmly, having practiced accepting whatever outcome would come. Mr. Johnson looked at him with a curious expression and said, "David, I've been watching you these past few months. Something has changed about you. You're different from the person I hired 2 years ago. Can you tell me what happened?" David thought carefully before responding. He could have made up a story about taking a special course or reading important books, but he chose simple honesty. "Mr. Johnson, I realized that I'd been lying to myself and others for years. I decided to practice telling the truth and being genuinely helpful, even when it was difficult. I discovered that when my mind is focused on real problems instead of imaginary ones, I can think much more clearly and do better work." Mr. Johnson nodded slowly. "That explains a lot. Your work quality has improved dramatically, and several people have mentioned how helpful you've been during this stressful time. David, I want to offer you something. We're not just cutting positions, we're also creating new ones. I'd like you to consider becoming our new team coordinator. It would mean more responsibility, but also more opportunity to help others succeed." David felt a wave of joy, but he kept his response measured and honest. "I'm very interested, Mr. Johnson. What would the role involve? And do you think I have the skills needed to succeed?" They spent the next hour discussing the position in detail. David asked thoughtful questions and gave honest assessments of his strengths and areas where he needed to grow. By the end of the conversation, both men knew this would be the right fit. That evening, David sat in his apartment reflecting on how dramatically his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a confused young man whose mind jumped from one lie to another like a leaf blown by the wind. Now, he felt like he had discovered a superpower that had been hidden inside him all along. The power wasn't magic or mysterious. It was simply the ability to choose his thoughts and actions based on truth and service to others rather than fear and selfishness. David realized that every person has this same power lying dormant within them. Most people never discover it because they're too busy running away from discomfort or trying to impress others with false versions of themselves. But when someone decides to face reality honestly and use their mental energy to help rather than harm, they unlock capabilities they never knew they possessed. As David prepared for his new role, he began thinking about how he could help his future team members discover their own mental strength. He wanted to create an environment where people felt safe to be honest about their challenges and supported in developing their skills. David understood now that true leadership wasn't about having all the answers, but about helping others find the courage to seek truth and grow stronger together. The young man, who had once been controlled by his wandering thoughts, had become someone who could guide others toward their own mental freedom. But David's greatest adventures in learning about the power of the mind were still ahead of him. His new position would present challenges that would test everything he had learned and teach him even deeper lessons about the connection between honest thinking and extraordinary achievement. David's first week as team coordinator brought challenges he had never imagined. He was now responsible for managing 8 people, each with their own personalities, work styles, and personal struggles. His old self would have panicked and started creating elaborate plans to impress everyone. But David approached this new responsibility with the mental discipline he had been practicing. On Monday morning, David called his first team meeting. As he looked around the conference room at his colleagues who were now his team members, he felt nervous butterflies in his stomach. Instead of fighting these feelings or pretending they didn't exist, David acknowledged them and chose to be honest about his situation. "Good morning, everyone," David began. "I know this transition is unusual for all of us. 3 months ago, I was sitting in your chairs, and now I'm standing here as your coordinator. I want to be completely honest with you. I don't have all the answers, and I'm going to make mistakes as I learn this role, but I promise you this. I will always tell you the truth about what I know and what I don't know, and I will work hard every day to help each of you succeed." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Linda, who had been with the company for 7 years, spoke up. "David, I appreciate your honesty. Most new managers come in pretending they know everything. It's refreshing to hear someone admit they're still learning." Other team members nodded in agreement, and David felt the tension in the room begin to ease. Over the following days, David discovered that managing people was like tending a garden with 8 different types of plants. Each person needed different amounts of encouragement, guidance, and space to grow. Maria was incredibly talented, but lacked confidence in presenting her ideas. James was enthusiastic, but sometimes rushed through tasks without checking his work carefully. Susan was experienced and reliable, but had become bored with routine assignments. David realized that his mental discipline training had prepared him perfectly for this challenge. Just as he had learned to observe his own thoughts without being controlled by them, he could now observe his team members' strengths and struggles without judging them or trying to force them to change immediately. With Maria, David spent time each week practicing presentations in private. He helped her organize her thoughts and encouraged her to speak up during meetings. "Maria," he would say, "your ideas are valuable, but they can't help the team if you keep them locked inside your mind. Think of sharing your thoughts as a gift you're giving to all of us." Gradually, Maria began contributing more confidently to discussions. David's story shows us something powerful about the human mind. Just like David discovered, we all have the ability to control our thoughts and choose our actions, but most of us never realize this incredible power exists inside us. When David stopped running from the truth and started facing reality honestly, his whole life changed. His mind went from being like a wild horse running everywhere to becoming a calm, focused tool that could solve real problems. The most important lesson from David's journey is this: discipline isn't about punishing yourself or forcing your mind to be quiet. Real discipline is about making conscious choices every single day. When you choose truth over lies, when you choose helping others over just thinking about yourself, when you choose to face your fears instead of running away, you build mental strength that can transform everything in your life. Remember, every person has this same power waiting inside them. Your mind is like a garden, and every thought you choose is like planting a seed. If you plant seeds of honesty, discipline, and service to others, you will grow a life filled with peace, confidence, and real success. Today, through David's story, we learned that controlling your mind isn't magic. It's a skill you can practice and strengthen every day. So start small. Be honest about where you are right now and take one step forward. Your journey to mental freedom can begin today. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If this story inspired you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, true change starts from within, and you have everything you need to begin right now.